OData service by using create entity method. In the next session, we'll focus on update entity and delete entity. After that, I'll take one more doubt session. So here, developing OData ABAP service using create entity method. So this create entity method, it can be used to insert data. Basically, it works for single record. This create entity method is used to insert data mainly for single record. If you want to insert multiple records, we are going to use create deep entity method in the coming days. So this method is specially designed to work with single record. For multiple records, we are going to use create deep entity method. Okay, so create entity method contains two parameters here, like IO data provider and ER entity. So this IO data provider, it is to accept input record from front-end application. So this IO data provider is used to accept input record coming from front-end application. It can be UI5 or Fiori app. And ER entity, it is to send output record back to the front-end application. It can be UI5 or Fiori, but this is technically sending the output record back to the front-end is optional. When you are inserting data, sending the record back to front-end is not mandatory. It is optional. Whatever record that comes from front-end, we are going to accept by using IO data provider parameter. But sending the same record back to front-end is not required. So that's the reason why this is not important. Only IO data provider that plays an important role here, especially when you're inserting the data. And create entity method is suitable if the front-end app contains input for accepting record with the help of simple form. If the front-end app contains an input with a form for accepting the record, input should be available with the help of a simple form concept. Technically, we call it as a form. So when we write the code, then I'll explain how exactly the data flow will happen. But let me write step-by-step procedure. So step 1, you can open SCGWT code and you can open your project. Which is created in previous session. We are not going to create new project. We are trying to add this functionality in the existing project. So I think our project name, let me open it. So let me go to SCGW. I think we are dealing with this one, Z630 AM CRUD OData project. Same project, I'm going to add this new functionality by implementing create entity method. If you face any problem, you can cross-check your code with this project. Okay, step 2. Make sure that entity type and entity set is available. In the last session, that means in the previous sessions, we have already created this entity type, that is EMP, entity set is EMP set. So we can make use of the same entity type, same entity set for implementing create entity method. So you need not create once again new entity type, new entity set for each method. Because every entity set contains 5 CRUD methods, you can also implement create entity method on the same entity set here. Because every entity set is associated with 5 CRUD methods. So create entity method implementation, we are going to implement by using the same entity type and same entity set. Okay, step 3. Make sure that runtime artifacts are generated. So today we are not adding anything in entity type or entity set. We are not making any changes in data model. So we can make use of the existing runtime artifacts. In previous sessions, we have already done this. We can make use of those existing runtime artifacts and we can directly redefine this method and implement that code. So in step 1, step 2, we are not making any changes in data model. So directly you can go for the next step, that is step 4. That is open data provider extension class. DPC ext, then click change. You can place cursor on entity set based create entity method and just redefine the method. And you can implement below code. So we'll try to write some basic code and then we'll try to understand the data flow and the testing procedure. Okay, so here entity type EMP, entity set EMP set. So they are already available. We can make use of this existing entity type and existing entity set. Okay, let us not disturb these things. And you can see runtime artifacts are also generated in our previous sessions. Today, we are not making any changes in data model. So we can directly go to DPC extension class. So let me go to DPC extension class. You can click change here. You can scroll down and place cursor in create entity method. You can redefine. Okay, so here you can see there is one important parameter, that is IO data provider. It is an importing parameter. It is capable of accepting complete record coming from front end. Okay, so you can remove these lines. So there is IO data provider. It's an importing parameter as part of the signature. You can see that. So this IO data provider is capable of accepting complete record. That record can have a number of fields depending upon the fields available in entity type. So if entity type contains 10 fields, then IO data provider can capture the complete record for those 10 fields. So here what we can do is, let me declare one simple work area. You can declare work area by using your normal ABAP approach. If you want, you can directly refer to ZEMPDB table. Work area type, our database table I'm using, ZEMPDB table. But if you want to capture the record, You need to capture input record from front-end app. So for that reason, you can use IO data provider. On top of this, you can call one method, that is read entry data. On top of this parameter, you can use one method, read entry data. So read entry data will help you to get the entire record coming from front-end application. So you can import front-end data into work area. So by writing this statement, whichever record comes from front end, that will ultimately will reach work area here. IO data provider is a standard parameter of create entity method. On top of this parameter, you can access a method that is read entry data. By using that method, you can import the front end data into work area. So now work area contains complete record. It can be coming from UI5 or Fiori app. That work area contains complete record. Now, if you want, you can apply conditions, validations, etc. For example, let me just make it like work area hyphen user ID is not initial. That means if it is not null, then I want to insert the data. So you can use insert statement, insert into some database table. Set EMP DB table, and values are part of work area. So we are trying to insert the record from work area into database table Z EMP DB table. If the insert operation is successful, you can go for commit statement here. So we are just writing 3 to 4 lines here, but here we are trying to insert into the database table by taking the record values from work area. And then we are committing that statement here. Okay, so let me explain the data flow, how it works. So this is a simple code we are implementing here. Okay, so this is related to create entity method. So this is part of create entity method here. And this is the implementation part at OData ABAP service level. It's your backend service. And for this, we are going to have a UI5 or Fiori frontend. So in front-end side, we are going to have something like an input form. Front-end side, we can have an input form, and this input form can have collection of input fields. You can collect input record from end user. For example, all these fields. Data for all these fields you can collect from front-end end user. Just add these fields. Okay, so this particular front-end Fiori or UI5 screen, we can create an input form so that user can provide complete record values. And here there can be some insert button. Insert record button, something like that. So there can be a front-end form. And here we can accept input record from end user by using these fields. There can be insert record button here. For this button, there will be some event handler. And this event handler will access create front-end method. It will access create front-end method. That's how we are going to design the front-end code. And this create front-end method, it will execute create entity method of OData service. So what happens is, so user will provide some input record values here. User will provide some input record values, and those record values ultimately will reach this work area here. Very simple. The complete record values will reach work area. And that is happening with the help of IO data provider parameter. It is happening with the help of IO data provider standard parameter here. With the help of read entry data statement or a method, we can capture the complete record coming from front end into work area. From work area, we are trying to insert the record into database table. Very simple. By using a simple insert statement, we're trying to insert the record into database table. So that means the front-end record, which is coming from this form, will reach work area. From work area, we are trying to insert into database table. So this is how the data flow can happen. In this case, the entire record will come from front-end to back-end. In this case, the entire record values will come from front-end to back-end into work area with the help of IO data provider parameter. Okay, so this entire code gets executed when user click on a button here. Button triggers event handler triggers create front-end method executes create entity method of OData service. Okay, so let me repeat here. Whichever record comes from front-end app, that entire record values will ultimately reach this work area. And that is going to happen because of the standard parameter IO data provider. On top of that, we are calling a special method read entry data. So this work area record, we are trying to insert into database table with the help of a simple insert statement, same like your normal ABAP. Now this entire code gets executed when user click on a button triggers event handler. Event handler triggers create front-end method executes create entity method of backend OData service according to the framework behavior. Okay, so this event handler executes create front-end method. That's how we are going to write. And that create front-end method ultimately executes create entity method of OData backend service. Okay, so this is a basic data flow. Say suppose if you want to send any record back to the front end, then you can write one statement here. Work area or from work area, you can pass that record to ER entity. If you want, you can write one more statement here. So if you write this statement, then that work area record will be sent back to the front end here if required. That's not really required, but in case if you want to send that record back to front end, then you can add one statement. You can pass work area record to ER entity. ER entity will send that record back to the front end. Instead of doing this, what we do is we try to use a refresh method. Refresh method will refresh the front end data as soon as the record is inserted. So this is not really required. Ignore that statement. Okay, this is create entity method implementation and data flow. Okay, let me activate. You can go back. There is no error. You can activate this entire class. Okay, let me copy the code for your note file reference. So this is a code we have implemented. You can save, activate. Then step 5. So what you can do is you can directly test the service. So you can open service maintenance, gateway client, select entity sets. That is, in our case, it is EMP set. So the service is already registered. In the previous sessions, you can directly go to gateway client. Okay, so here, let me select entity sets. EMP set is our entity set. Now, if the front-end application screen is ready, then you need not really worry about the gateway client procedure here. If the front-end screen is ready, then you need not worry about gateway client procedure. Okay, so if it is not ready, then how to test it? How to test create entity method? So first what you do is provide some input here. Example, user ID 1001. Fetch one sample record here. What you do is just fetch one sample record. By using get option, you will get a sample record available with this. So now there is a sample record and you are able to get XML format. That is important here. We are able to get XML format. That is important. So in this case, if you closely observe, when you provide something in brackets with key fields, with get option, when you execute the service, it is executing get entity method. Get entity method is fetching that record. And you are not only getting record, you are getting that XML format. That is important for us. Okay, so after this, okay, first what we are trying to do, we are trying to test create entity method, but before that, first fetch one sample record. So that means first we are testing get entity also here. So we are trying to execute get entity. What we are trying to do? We are trying to provide this in the URL. We are selecting get option and we are trying to execute the service. So at this level, get option executes get entity method of OData service. Very simple. You are already aware of this. When you provide entity set, after entity set, if something is provided in brackets with key field and its value, then with get option executes get entity method of OData service. But now my intention is to test create entity method. So that you can continue here. Testing create entity method. So if you want to test create entity method, now you can continue this process. After fetching one sample record with XML format by using get entity method, you can select use as request option here. You can see this. There's a button use as request. So the XML format is copied from HTTP response to HTTP request here. The XML format is copied from HTTP response to HTTP request after selecting use as request option. That's the purpose of this button. Now what you can do is, okay, let me write this. Click on use as request option. So what this will do? This is to copy XML format from HTTP response to HTTP request. Very simple. The purpose of use as request option is just to copy XML format from HTTP response to HTTP request. Okay, so the format is copied here. Now what you can do is you can provide new record values here. So what you can do is you can provide new record values and you can use post option to execute the service. Okay, so here what you can do is you can provide new record values. You can see, for example, 1001. I want to insert a new record with 1007. I think that record is not available. So let me insert that record here. So 1007, Kiran Kumar, kiran@ca.com, something like this. For example, country US, 56,000 and some phone number. So this is a new record we have provided inside HTTP request option. So after providing a new record values, what you can do is from service URL, you have to remove this. Don't use user ID, etc. From service URL, you have to remove this. Just use entity set and then select post option here. And then execute the service. So if everything goes fine, you'll get a message as record created here with 201 status. 201 says that it is created. That means the create entity method is successfully executed. But what's the proof? You can open database table and you can verify. So let me open database table by going to S11. At EMP-DB table, you can open that content. You can check whether that record is inserted or not. Here you can see 1007, that's a new record with Kiran Kumar, kiran@ca.com, US 56,000. So that new record is inserted successfully here by executing OData service here. Now say suppose I want to insert one more record, 1008 record I want to insert. Right, so here, okay, first let me write this procedure. So here you need to provide new record values inside HTTP request section. Provide new record values inside HTTP request section. For example, I provided these values. Let me just add that. Provide new record values inside HTTP request section. After selecting user's request, we are copying XML format from response to request. In request section, you have to add new record values without disturbing the XML format. After adding new record values, what you do is from service URL, you need to remove this one. User ID equal to 1001, first name equal to something like Vijay, so that you have to remove from the service URL. After entity set, use entity set, but remove this from the service URL. And then you need to select post option here and execute the service. So when you select post option at this level, the post option executes create entity method of OData service. At this level, post option technically executes create entity method of OData service. If that execution is successful, then you can verify the data. Data verification, you can just simply open 11T code and you can just open ZEMP-DB table. And the contents of the table and check whether new record is inserted or not. So that's how you can verify this. Now let me repeat this once again. So I've written the entire procedure. Let me repeat this entire procedure once again from gateway client. So first open gateway client, select entity sets, for example, EMP set. So when you want to insert record from gateway client through OData service, you should have some XML format. For that reason, we have to get one sample record. For testing purpose, get one sample record. For example, user ID 1001, first name. Now try to select get option. When you provide something in brackets with key field values, with get option, it executes get entity method and you will be able to get that sample record in XML format. Now, what you need to do is you need to select use as request option here. Use as request option. So it will copy XML format from HTTP response to HTTP request. You can see that. So the same XML format is copied from response to request here. And in request section, you can add a new record inside this XML format without disturbing begin tag, end tags. Be careful. So let me add one new record, for example, 1008. Something like Satish. Let me use email ID. Country, for example, UK. And this is 79,000. And this is a phone number. So this is completely a new record here. 1008 Satish. So that record is not available in the database table. So we are trying to insert new record by providing that record values in HTTP request. After this, what you need to do is select post option here and remove this from the service URL. Remove this user ID first name from the service URL. Select post option and execute the service. Now, if XML format is properly available, then you can say you'll get a response as 201. That's a success for create operation. If the record is successfully inserted, then you'll get 201 as success status code by default. But for clarity purpose, you can open database table here and refresh. Now you can see that new record is also available, 1008 Satish Sharma. So that new record is inserted here. And this is inserted by executing OData service create entity method. Okay, let me give that diagram. So what we are trying to do is, first we are trying to fetch the record. We are providing this, we are fetching that record. By using get option, we are executing the service. So technically, after providing this key field equal to value, by selecting get option, executing the service, then you are able to get the sample XML format. By using get option, we are executing get entity method and we are able to get the sample XML format here. And after this, we are trying to go with the second method execution by selecting users request option. We are selecting users request option, so it is copying the XML format from HTTP response to HTTP request here. By selecting users request option, we are copying XML format from HTTP response to HTTP request. And as a developer, what we are trying to do, for testing point of view, we are trying to provide new record values here. In between begin tag, end tag, without disturbing begin tag, end tag, you need to provide new record values here. So be careful, provide new record values. Okay, let me write that here as a note. So it can provide new record values in HTTP request section, because we are planning to insert the record. After providing new record values in HTTP request, what you can do is you can remove this from the service URL. Okay, let me just make it like this. So here from service URL, you need to remove this. Okay, so you have to remove this user ID first name from the service URL and select post option here. And then finally execute the service. So we are executing two methods. First get option, then now post option. Post option executes create entity method of OData service and it will insert the data. So this is the overall process you need to follow. Okay, so here, when you select the get option, in this example, it is executing get entity method of OData service. And then next time we are executing with post option. So post option is executing that means it executes create entity method of OData service. Whatever is in red color, that is the first part. Whatever is in violet color, that is the second part in this execution. First get option, you get one sample record, copy that XML format, provide new record, remove that from service URL, then select post option, execute the service. So for testing create entity method, this is the entire process you need to follow. From gateway client, it looks very difficult to test this method. If the front-end application screen is ready, then you need not really worry about this entire procedure. We are assuming the front-end screen is not available, then we are understanding this entire procedure through gateway client. Okay, so I've written that here. First get entity, then test create entity. Just before testing create
not appearing. Yeah.
If you are using, what about others? Can you see my screen? Can you hear me?
See.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Now
Yes,
it's
sir,
okay.
yes.
It's better use fast internet and don't attend from mobile device. There will be a problem. Okay, so here you can see first we are testing get entity method and then we are testing create entity method. Just before testing create entity method, we are trying to use as request option. This is one of the important option where you can copy the exact XML format from response to request. Then only you can supply the new record values. After supplying new record values, we are removing this from the service URL and we are selecting post option to execute the service. Post option is executing create entity method. So this process you need to remember if the front-end screen is not ready. Otherwise, you can ignore this. Now, let me just explain that once again. Let me repeat here so that you'll get more clarity. Same procedure as it is, I'm trying to repeat. Go to gateway client, select entity set here. And you can fetch any sample record. Need not be 1001. You can get any sample record here. For example, 1002. I think this is Ajay. Any sample record. By using get option, execute the service. So you are able to get that sample record 1002 Ajay Sharma in this case. So at this level, get entity method is fetching this record. Get entity method is fetching this record. Now I'm expecting create entity method. So you have to copy this XML format from HTTP response to HTTP request by selecting this option, use as request option. So let me select this, use as request. Now the copy of XML format is available in HTTP request section. So here you can provide a new record. For example, 1009. Let me provide that new record. 1009. Let me make it like new record. So this is a new record values we have provided 1009 with Sachin. But when you provide new record, be careful. You should not disturb that begin tag, end tags. You have to follow that strict rule. Without disturbing begin tag, end tag, you need to provide new record values. Now, after that, remove this from the service URL. You can remove this user ID first name from service URL, then select post option here and execute the service. Post option will try to execute create entity method, and you will get a default status code as 201 says that record is created here. But for more clarity, what you can do is you can open database table and you can verify the content. So you can see here, if you refresh, now you can see 1009 Sachin. So that record is newly inserted here. So that's a testing procedure. Now, in this case, we are inserting always a single record. In this case, we are inserting always a single record. Please remember that. If you want to deal with multiple records, we are going to implement create deep entity method for that reason. In the future, in the training, we are going to use that method as well. But as of now, let us understand these two basic things here. In today's session, so when you are using get option, it is executing get entity method. And when we use post option, it is executing create entity method. Just remember this. And there is one more important note. So what is the purpose of use as request option? It's very simple. It is to copy XML format. Default is XML, so it will copy XML format from HTTP response to HTTP request. It is to copy XML format from HTTP response to HTTP request so that we can pass a new record or an updated record as input to OData service via HTTP request section. What's the purpose? We are copying XML format from response to request. But why we are copying? We are copying just to pass a new record, or in the future, we can use the same option for passing updated record. You can pass a new record or an updated record ultimately as an input to the OData service. So in today's session, we are passing new record. In the next session, we are going to pass updated record. But ultimately, you have to use as request option here. So it is to pass a new record or an updated record as an input in order to pass that input to OData service. So here, now how the front end screen looks like. Let me just open that. Let me save this first. This is a testing procedure for create entity method. First get entity, but finally it executes create entity. Okay, let me open the front end screen. Okay, so here, just for idea purpose, let me open it. So we can develop screen 1, screen 2, etc. And here you can go to third screen. For example, you can select record. The selected record will reach here. Now from this, you can insert a new record by executing OData service. This is a screen. There's a front-end Fieri screen where you can insert a new record. For example, 1010. Okay, let me make it like Suman Kumar. So that's a new record, 1010, Suman Kumar. Let me provide suman@ca.com. Country India, 66,000. So this is a new record values here. You can click insert button. That's how the screen can be developed here. And if the insert operation is success, we can display front-end message like success here, like record inserted successfully. But what's the proof? You can open database table here and you can refresh. Now you can see 1010, that is Suman Kumar. So that's a new record inserted from front-end application via OData service. This record is inserted from Fieri screen, but internally Fieri executes OData service. OData service executes create entity and we can insert the record like this. So if the front-end screen is ready in this manner, then you need not worry about this entire procedure. Step 5, testing the OData service from gateway client. This procedure is lengthy procedure. It's not really required if the screen is ready like this. We can bypass the testing procedure and we can test it directly from front-end screen. Okay, just let me give some screenshot for clarity purpose. So there can be an input form, something like this, and there can be a button like insert data here. CP Fieri intent screen. Accepting input record. Insert data. Okay, so here in the front-end side, what we do is we are going to use this. Of course, we are going to develop that in the coming days. Let me just give some idea here. So button triggers event handler triggers this particular coding. You can see button triggers event handler triggers create front-end method here. So this create entity method, create method, it's a front-end method. We have to configure our entity sets and we need to pass our new record through data object from front-end. This data object in the front-end, we are going to manage so that it contains a new record. So this complete new record from front-end will be passed to OData service in the form of some object. In this case, we are using name of the object as data object. And we are configuring entity sets. And we are calling create front-end method. Create front-end method, according to OData service, it executes create entity method of OData service according to the framework. So from front-end, when you call create executes create entity method. That's how the framework is designed. Create executes create entity method of OData service. So this create internally will use post option. This create front-end method internally uses post option to execute create entity of backend OData service. So that's how the framework is designed. Accordingly, we have to write the front-end and backend code. So this front-end code, you need not worry now. Just for knowledge purpose, I've opened it. We're going to write the code from scratch level. Okay, so in the next session, what we'll do is we'll try to test update entity also. It's almost same procedure with some slight changes. After that, if you have any doubts, I'll clarify. Don't worry. But I received 2 emails. Let me just answer those people. I think Manohar. I think in step 6, you're trying to generate something here. Let me just answer Manohar. So what you do is just click on yes option. You got the screen, just click yes option and click on advanced here. Then you can continue.
But still it is not coming, Vijay. I tried that one.
If it is not coming, then you try from different browser.
Okay.
Click on advanced. Basically, it should work. And try from different browsers. If you have done from Google Chrome or something like Microsoft Edge, it's better try from Firefox and Chrome also. I think in one of the browser it will work. No need to worry. Just click on advanced option.
Okay.
And there is one more email I received. Let me just go through that. So here you can see Jitendra, I think. So Jitendra, I think you have used index twice and you're trying to capture the values. So there is a problem. Index 1 to capture user ID, same index 1 you're using to capture first name. So that's the reason why the execution is not happening properly in your case. So try to use index 1 for user ID, index 2 for first name, because in entity type, index starts from 1. So first field, key field, that will be index 1. Second field, key field will be index 2. So better use index 1, index 2 instead of using same index for 2 different fields. You're using same index 1 here. That's a problem.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And execute the service by correcting this code. Okay, so tomorrow what we'll do is we'll try to execute update entity also. After that, I'll clarify your doubts. Okay, don't worry.